So good morning. We're going to call the licensing committee of the Contractor State License Board to order. It's about 11:30, I believe. So hopefully anybody who wants to have the information in front of them, it is in the books in the back. Do we want to go through introductions again? Yes? All right, let's start with you, Charlotte.
Charlotte Allison, Licensing Division.
Laura Zuniga, Chief of Legislation.
Wendy Ballvance, Testing Chief.
David Delatorre, Board Member.
Frank Shutter, Board Member.
Susan Granzella, Board Member.
Cindy Christensen, Registrar.
Kevin Albanese, Board Member.
Johnny Simpson, Board Member.
Cindy Kanemoto, Chief Deputy Registrar.
Christy Shields, Counsel for the Board.
And Rick Lopes, Chief of Public Affairs.
Ed Lang, Board Member.
Claire Goldstein, CSLB staff.
Rick Piers, Basic Crafts.
Daniel Cullen, Television Education.
Nicole Newman, Licensing Manager. Ashley Pablo, Public Affairs.
Felix Salavas, California Highway Patrol.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much, everyone. There is a...
Your microphone, Linda, please.
I'm sorry. Thank you. There, in Agenda Item B, there's a public comment session for items that are not on the agenda and future agenda item requests. So anyone from the public can appear up at the podium. However, we cannot address in this meeting or take any official item on the items that might be brought up. So if there's any public comment at this time? Okay. So I'm just going to introduce the report, and Charlotte, unfortunately, Larry's not feeling well today, and Charlotte will be stepping in for Larry. Before Charlotte gives the update, I want to note that part of the discussion today involves the licensing committee appropriately being asked to review the reports and data that have been historically provided. We really need to determine whether or not that information continues to be relevant, and whether it should be replaced or removed completely or augmented in some way. As the reporting takes a significant amount of time, and licensing committee deserves and desires, frankly, to have the most informative and important decision to, information to make the decisions that it needs to. This is a worthwhile exercise that we may not complete today, but we're certainly going to get it started today, and we should complete it in the near future, hopefully at the next licensing committee meeting, and it is a part of the licensing report. So moving to agenda item C, Charlotte, if you would provide the licensing program updates, and I'm assuming Wendy will do the testing updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. The information provided by the Licensing Division hasn't changed since the last board meeting. Larry wanted for it to stand as it is. He really is looking towards exactly what Linda said, eliminating things that are passé or that we're not really jumping out at you anymore. So we have the average number of applications received per month. It's the first chart that's provided. And this entails the 4 application types that are processed by the application units: the original exam, the original waiver, add class, which is supplemental classifications to existing licenses, and those applications that are for replacing the qualifier on existing licenses. So this average is provided and changed each time we have a meeting, either committee or board, and it's provided for each fiscal year. Is there any changes or?
Let's go ahead and go through what you have here. And I think in general, we're very fortunate because we get this information pretty much a week before the committee meeting. So in general, we have looked through this, and I know you haven't done the reporting out. In general, what we've done, and Larry's relatively new too, because he's new to the job. What we've done in the past is if people have questions about the different charts, they'll bring them up. Otherwise, we go through the first couple pages of those reports relatively quickly. I think the one that we spend some time on is the workman's comp situation, because we're having a discussion, obviously, that's also occurring at the enforcement committee level about how the entire workman's comp certification compliance issue is being managed, for lack of a better word, by CSLB between licensing and enforcement. And really where the focus needs to be. So, and Kevin, I know this has been particularly, and you're obviously in charge of the enforcement committee, has been particularly important to you because there's some categories that just intuitively, it doesn't make sense that they don't have workman's comp. And at least from our experience and being in the business for, a zillion years between, all of us. So is there a discussion you want to have on that item today, or you're good with the reports the way they are?
No, we had the discussion in enforcement. We're good.
Okay. All right. So I think then what we're looking for is there some issue, and you're working very closely to what's going on in licensing, is there some issue that you're perceiving is a real challenge for the licensing division at the present time, or is it really about streamlining as much as possible, and you're asking for our assistance there?
So I think streamlining is always a good thing, so we can just report exactly what it is you need to look at. Challenges in our units right now are we have staffing shortages, so the app units, of course, are struggling to stay within the time frames that are recommended by the board. So right now, our app exam units are, I think they're like 9 weeks out. And I know Larry wants to continue to focus there. He has a goal set for 4 weeks or less. And in order to do that, we need to fill our vacancies and to move forward with what is already part of the strategic plan, which is updating and streamlining the application and just keeping those positions filled so we can get the applications processed. So we have, in the first couple of pages, the workload, which always increases during these months. From spring to summer, we have the highest number of applications. One thing I want to point out that Larry's worked really hard to make some changes in our issuance unit. Those applicants that take examinations and are ready to issue, we're now at 2 weeks. We were about 4 or 5 weeks out. So we have been able to bring that within the 2-week goal that Larry had set. So of course, then we have the workers' comp information in here, those that are covered and not covered, and it seems pretty static. From month to month, it's always the same. And we've also provided the active license classifications and the percentage of those individuals that have exemptions. We provide the disposition of the applications by fiscal year, and as you can see, our outstanding applications that are still being processed are about 1,700. We have our fingerprinting information available. The number of DOJ records received this year has been about 20,000. And the numbers have dropped off a little bit in EVU. Our streamlined processing, we're doing well at identifying those individuals that have pre-existing issues that need to be taken care of and getting applicants scheduled for exams. So we also have the LIC workload information. The number of calls we received through February, which was reported at the last board meeting, and we still have the longest wait times at about 4 minutes and the average wait time at about 4 minutes. So we have the judgment unit information that provides the number of letters that go out, initial suspension and reinstatement for each of the items that could affect the license, a judgment, an outstanding liability, a bond payment of claim, and then the total savings to the public as a result of collecting for those. And then finally, we have the number of weeks that indicate, here again, it's February, and we were about 9 weeks out. That hasn't changed much for exams, but all of the transaction units are doing quite well. So does anybody have any comments, or?
I did have a question, and I think you probably already have the answer, but the application for the original license exam as of February got pretty high in
Yeah.
terms of wait time, but that's down now, right?
No, it remains the
Oh, it
same.
does, okay.
That is the area we have vacancies.
Okay. How
Yeah,
many
so-
vacancies?
We have one vacancy, and we have a supervisorial vacancy also for
okay.
that
All
unit.
right.
So
So-
we have a new supervisor picked out. We're just waiting to hear the word, and we're getting ready to interview for that.
For the, okay, and for the
Technician.
other vacancies. So are you hoping that in the next couple months, you've actually filled both
Absolutely.
vacancies?
Absolutely.
So we should see this number start
It
to
will
fall.
move.
Because that's pretty significant.
It
right?
is.
3 months.
Yeah, it
So,
is.
Right. Okay. All right. Thanks, Charlotte.
On the vacancy, that's, because one of the things that I did notice, the call center seems to be, is this on?
Yeah.
The call center seems to be doing a great job staying up with the workload and not falling off. Certainly in the processing here, is this something that the board or Cindy, I guess, would be considering overtime like we're doing in enforcement?
Yes.
Is one thing. The other thing that I'm very sensitive to, especially with, I think I could say it, the lunacy that exists in 7031, the certified license history and taking 5 weeks to get a certified license history. I think that's something that we need to be very careful of because that is the only way that a contractor can prove that he or she is licensed in a civil case. And if you're in the middle of that, waiting 5 weeks is probably not going to be a good outcome for a licensed contractor. So I would encourage us to spend some time on that and make sure that that doesn't
Right,
continue.
thank you.
Any other questions for the licensing part of the update? Wendy, would you like to take the testing?
Certainly. Public comment?
Oh, I'm sorry, Wendy, just a second. Go ahead.
No, I mean, would you like to take public comment on
I'm
it?
sorry. I did say anybody. Apparently, I must specifically invite you. So does the public have any comment that they would like to make on the licensing update? I think we've hit on the high points, and more importantly, I think we're hearing that there is a solution between overtime and filling the vacancies and focusing, and Kevin's very right about that other issue, because that's, can create problems, more problems for contractors that are well within their licensing, certification rights, everything. So, nothing for the public? Thank you, I'm sorry, Wendy, please, go ahead.
That's fine. The testing division is responsible for developing and administering CSLB's 46 licensing examinations at the 8 test centers around the state. We schedule over 30,000 exams yearly and test nearly every working day. Most applicants are required to take a long business examination in addition to their specific trade examination. So on page 102, you can see that our exam administration numbers are up in that fine bar chart. All of CSLB's licensing examinations are based on current occupational analyses of the trades, which provide a current description of construction work performed by each trade. We keep all of these examinations updated on a 5 to 7 year cycle. Currently, testing has 4 exam programs in the occupational analysis phase, 8 in the exam development phase, and we recently released 3 new exams, C8 concrete, C15 flooring and floor covering, and finally C43 sheet metal. Are there any questions?
So still, the largest amount of exams are happening in Southern California, which is, I guess, not surprising, but
Population
it felt
base.
like, exactly. It felt like the Bay Area together might have some, but it's really happening in Norwalk and San Bernardino, so, okay, thank you. Are there any questions? Are there any questions from the public? Okay, we're going to move on to the strategic, we're going to move on to item D, which is the prioritization of the strategic plan. I don't know, since Larry's not here, would you like to do this part of it? Or Charlotte, are you prepared to do this?
I'm prepared to read through
Okay,
these.
all right, well, and
could
I
tell you.
think as a part of this discussion, we should also open the discussion to what it is that we're looking for here, so that as we develop these strategic plans, it's with the concept of how that report out's going to look, so we're prepared as we go forward.
Correct.
I mean, Charlotte will go through it, but I think basically this is just so that you can review it prior to it going to the full board for
Right.
formal approval.
Right.
So it's
This is just a wrap-up of our
Right.
actual strategic planning.
Right.
This was agreed to in
Right.
strategic planning, and we're just kind of validating it to move it on, right?
Right.
Correct. So our prioritized list begins with 1.1, which is revise the application package and related outreach materials by September 2016. And I know this has already begun, and we're already working on it. And we want to decrease the confusion, increase compliance, and reduce processing time mightily. So 1.2, create an exam development overview and presentation for future board meetings. Again, September 2016, demonstration of computerized testing to provide education and understanding of the process. 1.3 is to identify specific criteria for examination waiver applications. September 2016 again. In conjunction with enforcement, developing a criteria for review of waiver apps that helps identify potentially problematic applications in an effort to deter those who may attempt to qualify by fraudulent means. 1.4 is the research and implementation measures to reduce initial app processing times. Again, we're already working on these, and these are due up December 2016. We're considering the processes, the procedures, and staffing levels and issues to identify possible efficiencies in app processing units. 1.5 is conducting a comparative study of pass-fail rates of state license exams. December 2016, this is to educate and inform board members and the public. 1.6 is developing an online smart application content to reduce app rejection rates. Everyone wants this, we can hardly wait. January 2017. In conjunction with IT, developing and implementing online applications with edits to help ensure that applicants provide needed content and that information is accurate. And 1.7, research handy person exemption by January 2018. Working towards determining potential modification or development of new license type in order to regulate activities, brings individuals into compliance, and reduces construction work from being performed by individuals that are unfamiliar with laws, codes, and safety requirements.
Thank you, Charlotte. Obviously, 1.1, 1.4, and 1.6 are all designed to make the application process much faster, much more streamlined, and frankly, not go back and forth with rejections, where you can have an online, if you don't fill out that slot, you're not going to be able to move on and submit the application. So you'll be able to stop people from basically making applications that are clearly going to get rejected.
Right, so we're working towards the kind of fill-in form that says, no, that's not right.
Right,
You can't go any further till you fill that in,
correct.
and that will help.
Right, and those are considered essential, so that is the
Yes.
focus of this entire strategic plan. The big focus is to get this entire application process
Absolutely.
where it works better for both the applicant and CSLB, right? I noticed that the important ones are 1.2, and just as a question to the committee, I mean, once we've had a presentation about how the exam process works, we don't really need to do that quarterly, do we? I mean, don't we need to do that like annually? So just get an update once a year on how the entire process is going forward, a demonstration of how maybe one of the new licenses is working inside the computer system or whatever, but perhaps think about what that one presentation is in terms of content that, to the board, right, that allows us to continually basically stay up at some really big change. Yeah, absolutely.
I think the goal of the training will be that, it seems like over the years, there'll seem to come a point where there's an influx of brand-new board members. probably do the full training again, but in between times, I probably would not see too much of the emphasis on training in that area, perhaps other areas, like how exams are developed, or focus more on licensing, just so that the entire board can get the whole process in each division.
Question on 1.5. What is our goal there, Cindy? I mean, we're thinking, we want to conduct this study. We want to understand the pass-fail rates of the state license exams, and we're informing both the board members and public, I guess, public being applicants, or just the public in general? What's the thought process there?
I believe this was brought up in strategic planning, and I think Wendy had a little bit more information on the exact content of it, but I think there was like the difference between why we report first-time test taker pass results instead of all pass-taking test results, because there is a big
You had a question on 1.7. What are we trying to do with that? I thought we discussed that at one of our other meetings and basically said, no, thank you. So what are we trying to do with 1.7 with Sandyman thing?
There was discussion at the strategic planning that there still does need to be something done or discussion taking place on perhaps raising the handyman exemption, because you still lowering it or just looking at it in general, because there still are these individuals out there that are practicing at a low dollar amount, they're ripping off consumers. And although that new C classification wasn't the correct approach or the appropriate approach to take, there may be some other approach, and the issue of, well, maybe we can look at the handyman exemption. That was brought up at the strategic planning session and brought forward as an item.
I mean, Johnny, the thing that I think we found out was the concept of having a baby B or a new C, not the right way to go. I mean, no one felt comfortable with that. Nobody felt like we should be, and we already have challenges with B, right? So we weren't couldn't get our heads wrapped around doing either one of those. But apparently, as a part of the strategic planning discussion, this handyman exemption at 500, is there a way to, get people into the system so that you can still do a certain amount of enforcement for people who are doing remediation or repairs or something, as opposed to actually building something where they should be under one of the existing license categories. So it's pretty far down on the list, I will say that, and it has a B after it, which is, it didn't get an A, it got a B. So I think everyone but the specific criteria for examination waivers, which I think is actually relatively important, is rated more important than that. So.
Yeah, I just don't see giving them a pass, but
Right.
We'll see what we come back with.
Right, I think that we were asked to have further discussion, so let's see if it even makes it during the next year. This is a 2-year plan. We may not be discussing it in 2016 and 2017 because there's too many other things that we're trying to get done. But it is on the list. So, I mean, is there a desire to take it off the list? I mean, what is it? I mean, can we do that, or do we?
My desire would be to take it off the list. I think the laws are pretty clear, and when something's working, I would think we leave it the way it is.
The way that it would work is because it was brought forward at the strategic planning meeting, if the committee did desire to do so, and I'm not quite sure if it's notice for action. No, it says prioritization. But you could either do it here at this board, at this committee meeting. I'll leave it up to Christy to determine whether or not you could make that motion, but it would go to the full board for no, yes?
I think the action would be to make it a low priority at this point, but to take it off the list would have to be something the board would have to handle at its board meeting. Because it's something that, as a group, the board had decided to put on the list. So I think at this point, it's notice for prioritization, so you could certainly indicate to the board in a motion from the committee that it would make it a low priority for this committee to handle.
Because they really haven't approved the strategic
Correct.
plan, so in June, if you
If
did
they wanna
desire to
take
make
it
that
off,
motion
that would
to
come
remove
at-
it, you could.
Correct.
Okay, we accept the motion.
Absolutely.
Okay, I would make a motion to accept the strategic plan, making item 1.7, and I will say extremely low priority.
I think we said low priority, you probably get a second, but. Oh, I'm sorry. So we have a motion. Do we have a second? Okay.
Second.
So who's calling the vote today? Oh, thank you very much. Public comment about the motion? Hearing none?
Committee comment. I tend to agree with you, Johnny, the handyman exemption, that's why we put it off till 2018, was not to, but I'm not sure that it is working. It's garnered a lot of discussion. I don't know what the right answer is, but what we talked about, if I remember right at the strategic meeting, was having it on the plan, something to discuss, though not for a while, so.
So our motion keeps it on the list, it's down at the low priority anyway, to a certain extent. It's marked B, which is the lowest category you can get on your priority list. We do have a motion, so I do think we should take a vote, and
I can call roll.
thank you very much, Laura.
Okay. Linda Clifford?
Aye.
Kevin Albanese?
Aye.
David De La Torre?
Aye.
Susan Granzella? Frank Shutter?
Aye.
Johnny Simpson?
Thank you, motion passes. So I would like to just open the discussion a little bit about the report outs that we're seeing at the beginning, and having just some discussion with regards to that, with the concept that we won't necessarily take an action today, because I want the License Committee to actually be able to think about what they might like to see. It would seem to me that in some cases, some of this stuff might be able to be rolled up, but I just do think that we want to process people in that are qualified as quickly as we can, because the way the law works, they can't work until they have a license. And so there's a big advantage to getting them into the system and licensed and working. And so to the extent that we take up staff time to, and there is a tremendous amount of time that is invested in these report outs to the board, we need to make sure that they're very useful to us and that we will act on them when we get information, or otherwise we need to let the staff do a more important job, which is get people licensed and get them to work. So I open it to the committee, and I will open it to public.
So you went back to agenda item C?
I am going back to agenda item C now, which I said we would go back to at the end.
You know, instead of going through the report, I'm sure everybody has their own subjective stuff. Can I ask Charlotte or Larry through Cindy to, one, let us know how much time it takes? What are the big time takers? You know, if there's specific reports that take an inordinate amount of time, maybe we could do a better cost-benefit analysis. But I don't understand the severity of the issue or the problem to go through and start line item vetoing, for lack of a better word, the different charts. Because I think they're all useful, but with a little bit more information, we might be able to say, yeah, we could live without that. But I would suggest that would be a better use of the committee's time than going through and talking about each chart.
Right. Thank you, Kevin. I agree. I'm not interested in talking about the charts as themselves also. And I think it's a good idea. Perhaps you and Larry and others of your team can sit down and maybe propose what makes sense in your mind for the board to know, and what would be useful for us to respond to in terms of giving you guidance or oversight. And I think the other thing is, to the extent that you can, some of these things fall out. Once you start one report, the rest of the stuff kind of falls out and it just charted differently. But so I think we do kind of need to know are there ones on here that are just really, really time-consuming? Or are there, or is it once you do the chart, kind of everything falls out? Then let us know what it takes to do the chart.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm going to work with Larry to kind of give you a breakdown on what's required of first-line supervisors and on up the chain, what each of those individuals need to do to prepare this information, and then how it goes to an AGPA, who a large part of her time, which used to be my other job, was to prepare this stuff. And, you know, for every board meeting and every committee meeting and whatever else, it takes a lot of time just to put it all together. So there is a position that deals solely with providing statistical analysis of licensing division information and all the reports that come from Teal. There's probably 20 of them that need to be looked at. So I can provide you with a breakdown of all of that so you can get a good idea of how it works. And then I know Larry has some specific ideas on how he wants to roll some of these together. And so if that would help, yeah.
Charlotte, I think that's a good idea. I also think that, let us know if there's other users of this information. In other words, if you're using the information already and you're reporting out to the board, well, then you're just, killing more than one bird with one stone, right?
Right.
But if we're the only users and you're only doing it for the board, that would be a good thing to know. So as you give us the information, qualify it by saying the users are the managers. So managers are using this information already, right? So we're preparing it because the managers use it to make decisions. Some of this stuff Larry's obviously using because otherwise he wouldn't know that he needs to bring things down to
Correct.
2 weeks or 4 weeks or something like that, right? So to a certain extent, you're preparing something pretty close to it. It may be that the report itself out to us doesn't need a chart that's this big for the call center, but says our average wait time is this, our longest wait time was this, our maybe it's just that. I don't know how many of the committee members, I was a math major in college, so I actually kind of get off on it in a weird way. But I don't know how many of the committee members are looking at each line this way and this way. They may be just looking for that large, what's the spread? What's the dynamic that's occurring in the call center?
Okay.
So maybe there's things that you can take into consideration while you and Larry talk about coming back to the committee with a proposal and additional information like Kevin asked. Susan.
I just wanted to say that I think it's a great move. I've talked about this for some time, having done this in a former life. And from a new user standpoint, a lot of the information could be consolidated. You're always looking for that bottom line, and it's really hard to get to, at least today, because we're doing it very quickly, basing decisions on the information. And I think it could be revamped and made easier, hopefully, for you to prepare, and then for us to see the bottom line. And instead of 25 tables or charts, 5, something like that. But that would take some thought and comments, which I have plenty. I'm happy to share. And but I think this is a great move.
Is there any comment from the public on this item? Okay. Hearing no further comments from the committee or the public, we probably would entertain a motion to adjourn the committee meeting. Second? Okay. Do we have to? Is there anybody that's going to vote no on adjournment?
Linda Clifford.
Aye.
Kevin Albanese. David De La Torre.
Aye.
Susan Granzella. Frank Shetter.
Aye.
Johnny Simpson.
Motion passes, meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending and for coming.